Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Game Center Live, the variety live stream talk show from the NYU Game Center. It's Tuesday, November 28th, and sadly, this episode of Game Center Live is our last show of the fall 2023 semester. We want to thank you all for joining us for these streams, but also it's not over yet. We have a great show planned for today. First, you'll be hearing from MFA alumnus Tori Smith, who will be talking about mount mechanics in video games. Joining Tori is Sharang Biswas, a current adjunct instructor here at the Game Center, who I cannot help but add was verbally confused when I told him he was specifically requested by Tori to co-host this segment. That was one of my favorite days in the office this semester. Following them, we once again have our bi-weekly helping of game industry news and scorching hot takes with The Discourse, hosted by Department Chair Naomi Clark. This time she is joined by Game Center alumnus, adjunct instructor, and progenitor of pasta divination, Jeff Petriello. That's coming up soon, but first we have some announcements. This Thursday, come to our last lecture series event for the fall 2023 semester with Connor Carson, the lead programmer for Immortality. In her talk, Connor will briefly touch on the design, themes, and overall structure of Immortality, and mainly focus on the technical implementation of the game's match cut mechanic, which acts as the player's primary tool for exploration and self-expression. For those who can't make it to the talk in person, the lecture will be live streamed right here on this channel at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. For those who do want to attend in person, there are still some seats available, and you can RSVP at the link in chat. Including this week, there are only 2 Playtest Thursdays left this semester. These are your final 2 opportunities to come test your work-in-progress games. Sorry, the background music is a little loud there for you. Before we take a break between semesters, yes, come to our last 2 Playtest Thursdays. Come on down to the NYU Game Center this Thursday from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. and get feedback from fellow game makers. Actually, that's a correction. It's 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. because we have the aforementioned Connor Carson lecture series event. Non-NYU guests are welcome to attend. To do so, please fill out the link in chat. Finally, as a cool news announcement, check out this article about games that tell personal stories through food from the New York Times, which mentions Nine Eyes Recipe by MFA grads Mai Hao and Fan Fang, and Consume Me, once again by MFA grads Jenny Jiao-Xia and AP Thompson. You can read the article at the link in chat. All right, that's about it for announcements and news. Without further ado, it's time to saddle up with Tori and Sharang. Take it away.
Hi. What an intro. Hi, I'm Tori Smith, and this is Sharang Biswas. Thank you so much for joining me today for this very serious talk. This is a no-bit zone about horse games and mount mechanics.
I'm excited, and it was true. I was confused. I'm like, I know Tori and I get along. We had a class together. But I'm not a horse person. I have ridden a horse once in my life and a camel twice in my life. So,
I mean, maybe throughout this talk you'll realize, like, oh, I've played more horse games than I thought I did.
That's possibly true. Or camel games.
Or camel games, which, if we're thinking of horses as a wide umbrella, definitely apply.
Right. Horse, donkey, camel, Pegasus, right?
Yeah.
They all apply.
Yeah,
right?
if you write it, and even if it has hooves or not, and I'm going to go through some criteria, why not? Why not be a horse?
Yeah.
So I've prepared a little slideshow today, very high quality, where we're going to talk about, like I said, horse games and mount mechanics. So let's saddle up, and let's just start with some vocabulary. So what is a mount anyway? If we're thinking less of horses and more of mounts, it's kind of a wider umbrella, right? Yeah. So a mount, like the definition of it, is a means of conveyance, even though it's usually associated with, mounting up on a horse.
Right.
So yes, that includes horses, but also includes like cars, spaceships, boats,
Piggyback
rides, mechs. If you run around in a mech suit, that could also count as a mount.
Oh, but that's interesting. Because if you think of mech, I have in my head like a size proportion. So if the mech suit is very close to your size, I don't view it as a mount. But if it's larger than you by a significant amount, I view it as a mount, you know?
Yeah, like maybe the exception to that rule would be like a Razor scooter or something, right? Because it's smaller than you.
Because I'm thinking of like, if like, let's say you're a Power Ranger and you're just in your Power Ranger suit. In some ways, you consider that a mech, right? Because it has weapons and it can do things.
Sure.
I wouldn't consider that a mount, right?
Right.
But when they go into their giant animal robot, I would consider that a mount.
Yes, like Pacific Rim
Right,
style,
right.
like I am encompassed in this mount.
Yeah.
Can absolutely apply. So this talk comes from a manifesto that I wrote here at the Game Center, and in that manifesto I go over some points of what I think, in my very biased opinion, but with of course research behind it, makes like good mounts and good mount mechanics. So we'll start with get along, little doggy. So it's I think that to make a good mount, you have to take long walks with that mount, which means reduced fast travel. So a lot of games have these fast travel options, but I'm a big proponent of not using them unless it's incredibly unwieldy. I know in like Starfield or No Man's Sky, you would probably die of old age before you got anywhere. So that's okay to use the fast travel mechanic because you should.
There's an interesting story there. I can't remember which game it was. This is bad, but I think it was Dragon Age Origins. But there was a running mode and a mounting mode. And if you went on the mount and turned on running mode, you'd expect, so I'm making my mount run. But the computation of that didn't work. So what the designers did is that they just added speed blur and speed lines if you did running mode while on the mount to just give the illusion of running faster. Which I think is very interesting, considering you're like, take long walks with your mount. Even if you try and take a faster walk, you can't.
Yeah, like appreciate the environment around you. And I think Red Dead, I'm going to be talking about Red Dead Redemption 2 a lot in this talk, because it is the new like hot horse game on the market, even though it came out, 5-6 years ago. But the way that their fast travel works is, one, you don't unlock it until much later in the game with this like little map here that I've got on the screen. And even then it's only one way. So you can leave from your camp to fast travel somewhere, but then you got to walk everywhere else.
That actually makes a lot of interesting like level design sense, right? Because if your camp is the same camp, or if is it interesting to go from your camp somewhere? Not really, but it is interesting to go from interesting location to interesting location, right?
Yeah.
That's an interesting like level design sort of choice.
Yeah, and then something that I lovingly call this like Barbie horse adventures for boys, Grand Theft Auto. So in Grand Theft Auto, you if you find yourself without a car, you can call a taxi. But then you're not driving the taxi unless you decide to rob the taxi driver, which more power to you. But if you were to play lawful good for a brief moment and you ride in the taxi, then that car is no longer really a mount. You're just like a passenger princess. And in Red Dead Redemption, there's also like the stagecoaches and the trains. You're just kind of along for the ride. You're not actually riding anywhere.
And that has its own things, right? So first off, if you're using the game as a fantasy for American urbanism, this idea of riding in a taxi becomes this like interesting experience. And also, I when Jameen Warren used to do the PBS videos on game design on YouTube, when he was editor of Killscreen, is he still editor of Killscreen? I don't remember. But there was a thing where countries where certain music was banned because of like explicit lyrics or whatever, they'd only ban music as like CDs or streaming, whatever. They wouldn't ban it if it was inside a game. So apparently a lot of people would play things like GTA and just cruise around listening to some of the music that otherwise was hard to access.
Yeah.
So again, this riding in the taxi becomes its own. It becomes an experience almost separate from the game mechanics.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, the music in Grand Theft Auto could be a talk on its own.
Right.
Because it's such a huge part of it. But I'm a big proponent of like, yeah, no fast travels anywhere. That screen better not fade to black on my watch. I wanna experience that environment. So then next we've got Giddy Up. Movement and maneuverability. So here we have a very famous horse in a game. These are the Skyrim horses that seem to defy all laws of physics by climbing up vertical faces of a mountain.
I kind of want to sing Defying Gravity right now.
That would certainly be applicable here. The horses in Skyrim are a great example. A car, which I had on a slide earlier, the Mako from Mass Effect, is notoriously finicky to operate and apt to ignore gravity in any sort of way. So I'm actually not a huge fan of the horses in Skyrim because of this, because I'm like, I feel like I'm in danger.
Yeah, I haven't played that much Skyrim. I actually got tired of it very quickly, but I played a lot of Oblivion with some high school friends, and I remember there being like a variety of horses to like pick from. Is that true in Skyrim as well?
Yeah, it's relatively true. If you really want to get into the nitpicky of it, they're just different colors. So that's how a lot of games cheat different horse breeds. It's like, oh no, this is a gray horse. They're faster. It's like, okay, but their legs are exactly the same. But in Skyrim, there are a couple horses. There's Shadowmere, and then I think there's another horse named Frost or something.
Oh, like specific unique
They're
horses.
specifically named, like they have personalities, and they are specifically stronger, a little bit faster, those sorts of things.
Like Shadowfax from
Yes,
Lord of the Rings.
yes.
Which brings my favorite horse moment in gaming ever, which is the Shadowfax card in the Magic the Gathering set. Do you know this moment? Yeah. So it's very funny because in the movie, I don't think the line is in the book, but in the movie, Gandalf says, show me the meaning of haste, Shadowfax. And haste in Magic the Gathering is a keyword that's so old, it's like from way back when, that no card writes the explanation for haste anymore. They just say this card has haste, and everyone knows it. But on the Shadowfax card, because of the famous line, show me the meaning of haste, they actually print the meaning of the keyword haste. And everyone, when they saw that, like, thought this was the funny. It needed to be explained to me because I'm only a casual MTG player.
Bit of a deep cut.
But some of my friends like, Sharang, he let me explain the joke to you. And I'm like, that's actually very funny. So
Very clever.
that's my favorite horse moment in games ever. You may
It's a
continue.
good one. And then, like another thing that, just to wrap up the maneuverability of horses a little bit, in games, horses in real life have different gaits, right? So we've got walk, trot, canter, gallops, all those sorts of things. And when you have them in games as options, it makes the travel a little bit nicer. And then what I think is a really nice
Are they
touch.
accurate gaits often in game? Like, Moybridge did the whole like study of them, right?
Yeah,
like,
so-
legs are not touching the ground in a gallop and all that kind of stuff,
I would
right?
say Red Dead Redemption 2 gets pretty close. There's a great blog called, I love the title of this blog, The Main Quest, MANE, that specifically reviews horse games for how accurate they are to horses in real life. So if you're ever curious about whether a game is true to life or not, and especially the animations and physicality, that is a great resource to check out.
Wow.
So some games do it better than others. Sometimes their knees go in opposite directions than they probably should have. But in Red Dead Redemption, as you bond with your horse, you unlock new maneuverability. You can rear. They call it drifting.
Oh, I love
in the
that
game.
because that is in there. Then the horse is not just a means of travel. You have to actually bond with the horse.
Yeah.
That becomes a bit more like a living, breathing animal that you. Because real horses, you don't just ride them and forget about them.
No, you got to
have
build that
bond with them,
relationship.
right?
Yeah,
That's really cool.
Yeah, and it's something that I really like in that game. And Barbie Horse Adventures sort of does this as well. I love Barbie. As you bond, your horse gets faster, your horse gets stronger. You unlock these new cool maneuverabilities that you see in real life. Like the drifting is from dressage. You can do like a 360 spin, and that's from Western Pleasure Reining. So you can tell that they really did their research.
That's really cool, right? Because in other games, the point of the fact that it's a horse does very little, right? You could, like you were talking about fast travel, you could just be like, oh, there is sprint mode, right?
Yeah.
Having sprint mode versus having a horse, the only difference is this like graphical thing. And of course, yes, that graphical thing does have experiential side effects, right? For the player, they look at a horse, they see a horse, they think of a horse.
Yeah.
But in Red Dead Redemption 2, that's cool because it has much more of a purpose, right? It's not just that it is something that it's a mini game on its own in a sense, right? And that's really lovely.
Yeah, and to expand upon that minigame aspect a little bit more, when you are riding a horse in Red Dead Redemption 2, if you press the button at a certain gait to like match with your horse's gait, you're encouraging your horse to go even faster. So it becomes a little mini game of like, it's a rhythm game inside this game.
Wild.
Yeah, it's pretty
wild. No, I love that. Awesome.
Yeah. So speaking of neck reining, I'm a big, Yoshi is a horse, by definition. So neck reining in this concept is like exclusive and improved abilities. And this goes back into like the fake going fast thing. You on a mount should be able to go faster than you on foot. And you should be able to do things that you can't do without your mount. And I think Yoshi is a great example. When Yoshi was first introduced in that level, you can't complete it without Yoshi. Yoshi makes you go faster. You can jump to places that you can't without Mario. You also get an extra hit point, I believe.
Well, that feels kind of sad. That means like, yes, the hit will hit Yoshi first.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, which happens in a lot of games. Like, no, your mount will take the hit first, and then you start taking damage. So it's your first line of defense.
You know, that is like the mount should give other capabilities.
Yes.
I like that because I was thinking of like, even for I think 2nd edition D&D, paladins could get mount. That was like the thing that paladins can get mounts. Which is different because rangers can get pets, but paladins can get mounts, which feel different. And if you're on your mount, you could do like charging attacks, and you could like do all these mount. I think in 3rd edition they had all these mounted feats where if you have like polearm weapons, you can do extra things on your mount, and it became a whole thing. And because it's a TTRPG, you can interact with the horse as much as you want to, right? The DM can go all in and be like, your horse is upset at you, like feed it better, right?
Yeah.
But the whole thing about like new capabilities with the mount was really big because that was one of the paladins' like arsenal of abilities, is that their mount lets them do unusual things.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get into this more later, but I'll go ahead and talk about it now. Where let me find my slide. We've got like junk in the saddlebags, so it's a big thing in especially open world games. This finite resource of storage, and for mounts in games, if we're counting spaceships as mounts, or anything like that, they usually have an immense amount of storage that you can upgrade and that you can change. A more recent example are the spaceships in Starfield, because I started playing it and was immediately weighed down. I was like, I got to go to my ship and drop off all this ore, and then it's a similar sort of deal with saddlebags in Red Dead Redemption, where ideally you can, when you upgrade certain equipment, you get some more storage on your horse. Sometimes it's just aesthetic, which I don't really agree with. It's like, no, let me carry 5 outfits instead of 3. But your horse as a base can carry all of your weapons, but when you leave the horse, you can only carry, like, I think 2 large weapons. So you got to sort of plan out what you're taking with you. Carries all the pelts and stuff like that. So the horse in Red Dead Redemption is not infinite storage, but it does help out.
Nice. Which is, a primary purpose of mounts, right?
Yeah. They got to carry your stuff, and that's what trunks or saddlebags are for. And then this goes back to the bonding thing.
Right.
It is such a big part of horse games for me. It's like the blog, Can We Pet the Dog?
Right, exactly.
Can we pet the horse? I want to pet the horse. I want to pet the mounts. I want to brush it. I want to feed it. I want to give it treats. And I want to pet it. And this was a big, compared to Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2, it was a big jump in that where you could actually like give your horse treats, pet it, and build your bond faster that way.
Yeah, they're like interacting with animal companions, even in like small cosmetic ways. Unlike whatever you're saying, you're building the bond, but like I'm thinking of like Hades, right? And like petting Cerberus.
Yeah.
Right. Cerberus, like you don't do that much. Like later on, they're like a door. They act as a door at one point in the game, but you don't do a lot with Cerberus. And yet, petting Cerberus is very satisfying.
I do it every time I die.
Every time. And part of the power of it is, of course, that because there's so many lines of dialogue in the game, that petting Cerberus each time is a different line of dialogue, which is like if it was the same thing again and again, I'd be like, okay, this is monotonous, but it's not, and that's part of it. Also, like that's like this. Our relationship to animal life is becoming more of a not focus, but more of a thing in a lot of games.
Yeah.
Like Can We Pet the Dog and all that, and that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I feel, and I wonder if that's gonna extend into like I don't know, goldfish or birds
Can I
or
pet the
whatever. Can I
goldfish?
like feed the goldfish, or can I like have the birds sing at me? Or,
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly games where that is true. I know in Mass Effect, you got to feed your fish.
Right,
or else
right.
they die, and
Right.
it's really sad.
I mean, in Coming Out on Top, which is a visual novel sex simulator sort of game about a gay college student, if you decide not to be with any of the dude options, you can dream about hooking up with your goldfish.
Good for you if that's
Yeah,
your thing.
yeah. You dream about it. The goldfish grows into human size, and you hook up with your goldfish in the dream. And it's because if you don't hook up with any dude, you spend all your date nights at home feeding your goldfish. And so
That's your strongest bond.
right. So in the end, you just have a sex dream of your goldfish.
Nice.
It's a good game. I recommend it. It's called Coming Out on Top.
I'm gonna add it to my list. And then tacking up, which I talked a little bit about with the saddlebags, you want to be able to like customize and dress up your mount. And this I have a screenshot from Barbie Horse Adventures Wild Horse Rescue here, which in my opinion is a watershed moment for horse games in the PS2 era. You want to be able to make your mount look the way you feel is best. It's like an expression of your own creativity. There's also like a bonus point if those customizations have effects in game. So certain stirrups giving you faster speed, saddlebags having more storage, those sorts of things.
Or something that maybe the horse likes, so you can bond with it faster.
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah, maybe something more comfortable, or like just making the horse look and maybe psychosomatically like feel healthier.
Yeah. Have you found in modern gaming anything similar to this Barbie Horse Adventures?
Red Dead Redemption 2 gets somewhat close. There's a lot of like tack customization there, and but not so much with the like coats and like mane options for the horse. Because you go out and you find these horses out in the world. There are a lot of different breeds, and I appreciate that they are aesthetically and functionally different. Like a draft horse looks and operates very differently than a quick little Arabian horse.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I imagine that in like a fantasy game could be very important, right? Because a war horse is, I'm sure, extremely different from a farm horse who like lugs carts around.
Yeah,
right?
the war horses are very hard to kill versus
Right.
the little
They also don't
delicate
get
guys.
spooked, right? They're trained to not get spooked by, whatever dragon's attacking you.
Yeah. And then you can take them to, and I'll jump over here to this Dude, Where's My Horse slide, where when you take them to the stable or the livery, you can give them like a horse care package. But I will say some of the like mane and tail options are kind of limiting, and you can also make them look disgusting. Like, Why would I take my animal and then make like the mane all matted? Why would I make it that way? I want to get the tinkles out and have my horse looking healthy. But I guess if that's your vibe, go for it. But
I mean, right, like, I think it is important to recognize that some people play games to be as ugly as possible.
Yeah.
Right? Like, a lot of
It's a whole
BG3 players are like, no, we're going to look freakish and it's going to be great. So I can imagine that caters to that sort of
I want to
player.
ride my diseased animal around the Old West. But so what's nice about like games that have a livery stable, so I've got Stardew here, and of course a screenshot from Red Dead Redemption, is if you lose your horse to a certain degree, you know where to find it. And even when you're out in the wild, if you've wandered away from your mount, there's a whistle feature. A whistle feature is very popular in a lot of games, and I have a screenshot here from Elden Ring with Torrent, who's become a new popular horse, although I think technically he's a goat. But you use your spectral steed whistle, and then he like magically appears.
Nice.
So because you don't want to get lost out there, because there's a difference between taking a long walk with your horse and then taking a long walk of shame back to
Trying to find, where's
back
the
to-
horse?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because I feel that, like Frank Lance talks about more realism, more immersion isn't necessarily more fun, right?
Yeah.
And like actually being like, oh, go back to the horse and clean up the horse's poop all the time might not actually be fun. So like the slight abstraction, like whistle feature, I think add to the enhancement of the horse in the game.
Yeah.
It's the enjoyment of the horse in the game.
Yeah, and then if you bond with your mount more, like you can whistle from farther away and those sorts of things. But definitely, there's a difference between like going on a lovely, like relaxing trail ride, and then just getting lost alone in the woods, which turns it into a very different kind of game.
Yeah.
This brings me to this slide. I'm a big fan in mount games of permadeath. If you lose your horse in a game, if that horse dies, I think it should stay that way because it's consequences. And Red Dead Redemption has like a horse reviver, which can bring your horse back from the brink of death. But if that horse is gone, sorry, bud, you're out of luck.
I think that's interesting, right? Because, and weirdly enough, this ties into themes of like, should we have homophobia in a game? Right? It's literally the same argument, right? Well, not literally, I shouldn't say it like that. But it's along the same argument, right? Like, are we playing this game for this fantasy escapism of like, there's no homophobia, everyone's lovely, / yeah, your pet will never die, your mount will never die, they're always lovely, versus no, right? Like, there are arguments in scholarly literature that showcasing queerness in games without showcasing a history of homophobia erases queerness as it exists in the real world.
Yeah.
Because queer people's history and lived experience are informed by the fact that all this bad stuff happened in the past.
Yeah.
And so you could transpose that onto this horse argument, not to say that, oh, queerness is the same as owning a horse. Obviously not saying that. But this philosophy of should you show violent consequence or should you show bad things in a game can be transposed, right?
Yeah.
Like, are we showing the reality of owning a horse if we don't show the bad things like that? The fact you have to take, like, this is a responsibility.
Yeah, there's weight to it.
There is weight. You have to take, you don't just, like, having a baby isn't just cuteness. No, you have to take care of this thing.
And this brings me to my next slide, and we are running out of time, so I wanna make sure I touch on this. This next slide does have spoilers on it, and a picture of possibly dying horses from games. So this is your warning of that. But it's called I'll Never Forget You, where like if your mount does die, it should have weight to it. It should have this narrative meaning. And in these 3 games that I have here, it's in the like embedded story of the game, but there's also emergent potential for it to happen out in the real world by accident, and it creates your own personal story outside of the written narrative of the game that I think is really lovely.
Which is what we talk about a lot when we talk about like emergent narratives in games, right? So.
Yeah. So I'll just wrap it up now with games with horses in them being very different from horse games, right? I've got pictures here of games with horses in them. Yes, chess is a game with a horse in it, but it is not a horse game. I've been asked this several times. Where like it's a moment in the game, but it's not a through line of the game. That's a big.
It's not a focal point.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to Robert Young making a pony play game. I would be extremely into that.
I support it. I think that's all the time we have. But thank you so much for talking about this very silly subject
Thank
with me.
you for inviting me. Like, ooh, let me invite my LARP professor
Yeah.
to talk about horses with me.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Tori.
Awesome. Thank you so much to Tori and Sharang for that wonderful segment. That was a ton of fun. I hope you learned a lot. I certainly did too. So now it's time for a second segment of the show. Bear with us while we get set up for the Discourse. All right, we're ready to go with the Discourse. Please welcome to the stream Naomi and Jeff. Take it away.
Yes, and as well as work at the New York Times.
Yeah, I'm working on games there. It's been fun.
Yeah, and working with this week's lecture series speaker Connor Carson.
Yes, absolutely. I was a producer on Immortality, which Connor was the lead programmer for, which is what she'll be speaking about. It was so amazing to work with her. I'm so proud of her. So glad she has the opportunity to be here.
Yeah,
the
so-
poster's sick, by the way.
Yeah, no, the poster is awesome.
Oh
I
my
don't know if
God.
you might have Logan might have had it up on the screen earlier. Yeah, it's an amazing poster. If
Who
you
did
are,
that?
It's James Fenner. Yeah,
Thank
James
you.
Fenner. Shout out to James Fenner. Just followed me on Twitter. Hi, James. But yeah, if you're in Brooklyn, you should absolutely come by 7 p.m. on Thursday for that. Or I think we're going to be broadcasting it on Twitch. So tune in here to see Connor talking about immortality. All right, let's just jump into articles. It was the 25th anniversary recently of Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
And this game was very meaningful for you.
Yeah, it really was. It was shocking that it's only been 25 years. It feels like a billion years ago. But Ocarina of Time, I was one of those people whose parents didn't let them play video games, and then it completely backfired once they unleashed it. So Ocarina of Time was one of the first. It's the game I remember first anticipating. If
Right,
that
like
makes
it was a
sense.
major event that was coming out. People were like
Humongous.
lining up. I remember that. I'm not gonna date myself by saying how old I was, but I was still in school, and yeah, it was exciting.
So yeah, I have this incredibly vivid memory of pre-ordering The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time to get the golden cartridge with the game guide, with it. Like, I was
Nice.
never so excited for something in my life.
It was so we're saying is a high watermark at the time for Nintendo marketing for sure.
huge. I mean,
Yeah.
Nintendo Power was all I read, and go back and look at it. It's literally a giant advertisement. Like, they made a whole magazine out of advertisements,
Right.
which is iconic. But
And it's kind of a new level of epic storytelling, you know, with the technology of the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Ocarina of Time, I mean, obviously it was like 3D Zelda. It was incredibly innovative for the series. I think a lot of people consider it one of the best in the Legend of
Right.
Zelda
Yeah.
series.
For a lot of people, they just go to it right away. Right?
Yeah, immediately. It's been remade 1 billion times. Like, it was just so influential on my idea of games as a cultural object, how they could bring people together, even single player games. And so I really hold this game dear to my heart. I would go so far as to say it changed my life. So I just wanted to take a moment to celebrate a quarter of a decade of Ocarina of Time.
Right. It's really interesting that time. I feel
century,
like
sorry.
I remember experiences from around then that were also like, oh wow, it's a big event that this is coming out, and you're gonna get it and like go home with friends and people would come over and be like, we're gonna play this new thing, like it's a blockbuster. For me, I think it was probably the year before. I think so. We just passed. It was Final Fantasy VII came out.
Oh wow, yeah.
I think maybe it might have been in the U.S. the year before, because didn't we just pass the 25th anniversary of that?
Something
too?
like that. Yeah,
Something like
absolutely.
that. And so it was also like, whoa. Of course, that was like the PlayStation
Counterpart,
one.
if you will.
Yeah, and then this is the Nintendo one, which probably also shows the age difference between me and Nintendo. But yeah, let's keep going with some more slightly good news. So this is following on all of our discussion of the Unity debacles in past weeks. Now, kind of in response to this, Game Maker has been like, we're going to go free for non-commercial use, which at first everybody, I think this is from Matt Parker suggested this. Oh, and there's, whatchamacallit, that game, Chicory
Yeah.
was made in Game Maker. So there you go. Like, hit games, winning lots of awards made in Game Maker. And so people are like, yo, this is great. And then someone pointed out, wait a second, why wasn't it already free for non-commercial use? I mean, Unity and Unreal have always been free for if you're doing totally non-commercial use. So Game Maker being like, you know what? We're gonna make it free for non-commercial use. A little bit like, really, guys? Like you probably. So I don't know whether we've actually been paying. Logan would know the answer to this. We have been paying. We've been paying for student licenses for Game Maker.
Yes, we have been paying.
So this is going to save the Game Center a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Woo! Because now we no longer have to pay for students to use Game Maker, which was sort of annoying that it existed in the first place compared to Unity and Unreal. But good for you, Game Maker. Thanks. Maybe we'll see some more projects in Game Maker.
Yeah, I guess one of the benefits of being owned by a giant company also.
Right. Yeah. You can just like have the luxury to be like, oh yeah, we don't care about this 10% of the market or whatever.
Exactly.
Like that.
No, this is ultimately something I think is great, though. Any tools we can get out there for free to help people learn how to design games and be able to produce something, like you said, that could go off and win awards. Like, it's the same engine. So, obviously, I guess that would be a commercial use of at some point.
So that's a commercial use. But still, like, I don't think it's pretty inexpensive for commercial uses as well. All of these things, I think it's, I don't know. This is the area where I'm like, actually, I do kind of think competition between different products or services is good, because we are in a situation right now, is like, people making games being like, the fact that there are Unreal and Unity nipping at each other's heel, and sort of Game Maker and Godot kind of like off in like a slightly different tier, is good for like, everybody wants to get people using their engines to make games. And if we had a monopoly, that would probably suck.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that Unity didn't get like sucked up by the M&A like marathon that has been the last like 5 years of games, honestly. And I wouldn't, I think we're seeing kind of like I hate to say the fallout of it, because I feel like it's great that they're still their own company, but
they were big enough that they started acquiring other companies. Right?
Yeah,
like that
wild.
was kind of like how they introduced the Rot into themselves, because they bought Iron Source. And then Iron Source was like, oh, must monetize everything. That's the way forward. And it was like, that's what sort of led to this mess. But let's keep on going. Let's get into some drama.
LOL.
All right. This was a big discourse. This is capital D discourse this week. If you missed this, you should check it out. Hit the link that Logan's just put in chat. J. Robert Lennon and Carmen Maria Machado, who are both, well, especially Carmen Machado, sort of a well-known figure in queer fiction, queer memoir, queer horror, gyno horror, like all sorts of, and both of them are figures who come out of like writing workshop, creative writing MFA programs. We can't shit on MFA programs here, because Jeff is a product of one, and we run one here. But creative writing MFAs, I don't. So Yeah, so there's like a certain type of creative writing, like sort of literature that spans like a little bit of genre fiction at the unsavory and all the way to like new literary fiction. And these two, like, I guess this is the story that they tell in this article was like, we were playing a lot of video games during the pandemic, and we thought, what if somebody were to write about video games?
Oh my gosh.
What if that happened? Like, can you imagine that somebody would like pick up one of these weird, slightly garbagey things and be like, I feel moved to write about it.
Slightly garbagey. No, I mean, the disrespect is just oozing. I'm sure their intentions were not malice, but
Well,
it's wild.
Go to the next link for their intentions. Here's what I think their intentions are. Scroll down there, being in a Mario picture in a newspaper, being like, check it out. This person's making games cool and highbrow.
Well, I mean, just there's so many beautiful people who have done this work for so long that it just feels like an insult, like regardless of how they
so
make it.
shady.
It's so shady. I do think, the interesting thing is like the framing around this. I look at the cover of that book, Critical Hits, and it said like the subtitle is like writers playing video games, and there is something interesting about that to me, and I wish that he just like leaned into that. Like, here is a anthology of writing by people who are not game writers,
Right.
like people who are not game journalists. Like, I could see that being interesting. It's like, have we ever had a bunch of people who've never written about games but are good writers decide to write about games?
They're
Like,
not.
that's
So,
kind of
yeah,
interesting.
These people they're definitely not immersed in the games discourse, right? Which is part of why they're getting crapped on by all the people who are and being like, where do you come from? You just show up and you're like, I declare this land America. It's named after me, Amerigo Vespucci, kind of business going on here. But I think you're kind of right that the fact that they're from outside, that is kind of inherently interesting.
I wish they leaned on that
Right.
instead of saying like we're like the first people.
We've discovered this new land.
You had shared Gita's reaction, Gita Jackson's reaction.
I think it's
at
the next.
Aftermath.
There we go. Yeah.
And first of all, Gita gets into this so well. This is an excellent response. I highly recommend it. But I just want Gita to know your work is not in vain. I just want to say that from my heart to you. If you ever hear this, absolutely not. It has been so valuable. It's changed so many people's lives. We've seen that here at the Game Center. So I just want to clear that. Games journalism for the past 15 years has changed the world for the better, I think.
Right.
But it is so insulting to writers like Gita, to writers like Kieran, who have put in all of this work to do this work. And I think the drawing in of the, sort of ephemerality of games journalism was so interesting and inspired and thoughtful to talk about why things like this, why do things happen? Like, why would this happen? And it's because, in large part, as Gita says, this industry, especially video games writing, like, doesn't pay attention to its history, much less preserve it. So that's such an interesting thing to think about, how we can get better at that 100%.
I know. And this is all sort of happening, well, alongside a bunch of things we'll get to in a second. But it is like, it's been such a terrible time for games writing.
Yeah.
Like so many things, places getting closed down. And, it's worth noting this piece is in Aftermath, which is one of this kind of like
The new,
Rising from the Ashes subscription model run by, Gita and friend of the Game Centers like Riley McLeod and other folks. But it's been such a hard time, and then to have people come along and be like, you know what might be interesting? If someone were to write a personal essay about games that sort of blends their own lived experiences, like the kind of thing that we've been reading forever. And the attitude, it's like, I should have found that there's one more link that I didn't include. I might have to dig it up and post it somewhere later. But the attitude on some of these, the coverage of this book is really like, well, there is writing about games, but it's of two kinds. One is like, it's academic papers. Like in academia, nobody wants to read that. That's like too much jargon, right? And then they're like, and the other one is like on sites like Kotaku, where like, Gita and Riley, a lot of the people used to, Kotaku, where it's all about, should I buy this game?
Yeah.
Is it fun or not? What's the review score? And so they're basically like, just like shitting all over well, both ends, right? Where it's like, okay, sure, maybe nobody wants to read a paper that you're presenting at DIGRA, but like the idea of like the new games journalism, people like Kieran Gillen and
Jamin?
Yeah, Jamin Warren, like a ton of people, like rose up out of the people writing about games who were doing it in this kind of craft, like get paid to post an article on a website. So sometimes you write reviews, and trying to elevate that, trying to sort of make it more interesting, literary, and personal. And then from the other end, from like descending on high from the MFA programs, they're like, oh, I see there were some people writing reviews. That's garbage. Now we're going to write a personal literary story instead. Out of the way, peons, kind of attitude.
It is very, at the end of the day, ignorant.
Yeah.
And that ignorance is not a foundation of anyone else's value. I would just like to emphasize
Agreed.
that.
But it can serve as a useful marketing tactic.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Just pretending that nothing else came before and that you're not beholden to anything, that you're just be like, I came up with this new thing. It's me.
And I also want to say, I do think there's an element of media feeling kind of protected by this narrative.
Yeah.
This sense that, oh, if we continue pushing these narratives that there is none of this writing, that this hasn't been possible,
right,
then we don't have to feel bad about not hiring journalists to do it, because it's always kind of staying on the outside.
Yeah, it's always sort of receding into the distance. And even like the editors of this anthology are like, we noticed that nobody writes about this in the New York Times and the New Yorker, which is like, we complain about that a lot. Although, Logan just put up like an article from the New York Times about the including a bunch of games from the Game Center about food, right? So, but they're right that this doesn't get the same kind of coverage as other media, right? And but this is it's all part of that story. It's like, look, we found this new thing, and then 10 years from now, somebody else is going to do the same thing again. It's going to be the same story. Look, does anybody write about games 10 years from now? So let's continue on and look at other horrifying things happening. I haven't seen anyone talk about it, but I had to share it. OpenAI, the people that run ChatGPT, made it possible for people to make their own GPTs a couple weeks ago, which kind of seems to be sort of hogwash.
Times, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're like, oh, I'm going to make a GPT, and you just tell it what kind of website you want to make, and I've already loaded it with some pre-prompted instructions. It's sort of bunk, but this one I was like, oh no, this is terrible. So somebody has made a GPT game that's basically kind of a ripoff of Secret of Monkey Island, except it takes place in a historical sort of serious setting. You have to go back. Now you're looking at all the other GPTs. But this, the Monkey Island one, I guess, okay, so that's the original article if you want to go and see the other new GPTs. But the Monkey Island one is just a choose your own adventure where it just is making it up as it goes along.
Sounds great.
Yeah, and it's I just feel like the reason I'm alarmed by this is like there's just going to be more of this stuff where people are like, look, I made my own new Persona 6. It's based on all the previous Personas, but you just say what you want to have happen, and then the AI just like confabulates a bunch of stuff based on all the other Personas.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I listen, I'm excited by the potential of this. I remember last year when I was teaching Studio 2 for the MFA program, it was the first time I really saw AI being useful to students in a really practical way, helping to spin up prototypes quickly. I loved it. Like, I'm not a universal OpenAI is a terrible, horrible, horrifying thing, especially for design work. I think there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it. But this kind of like narrative work, like, come on. Like, this is just like, I don't know. It seems like a gag to me.
It's a bit of a gag, right? Like, well, also, I'm kind of curious. So Furkong in chat is pointing out the similarity to AI Dungeon, which I think is kind of close to what this is, except now we're like a few years past AI Dungeon, right? So it's very structured, and ChatGPT can be like, here, I'm going to give you 3 choices.
Yeah.
You can just type in the number of which one you want to do, and the choices are all kind of stuff that you might find if you mash together like a 17th century pirate story. It's kind of like Sid Meier's Pirates meets Secret of Monkey Island, but it has like magic and stuff. But the weird thing is that instead of choosing the 4 choices it gives you, you can just write in whatever you want.
I love that.
So you can be like, I pull out a machine gun and I shoot all of the pirates.
Oh my God.
And then it'll be like, okay, and make a picture of you shooting the
Wow.
pirates with the machine gun. Actually, it might not do that because of like violence restrictions in ChatGPT, but you can like write whatever you want. And so that means it's not nobody's designing this.
No.
Not even the person who made the prompt is designing it, because you can just immediately make it a porn story about time travel if you want.
As one does.
Yeah, I feel like that's sort of maybe the direction all of these goes to. Like an interdimensional portal opens and Beyonce steps out. Oh, wouldn't that be funny?
Actually, that sounds good.
Yeah, so it just all mashes up immediately. Like everything mashes up immediately. And I don't know. I guess it's just a new, different thing. That's what I saw Brian Bucklew comment on Twitter about this kind of stuff. He's the designer of Caves of Cud, so very familiar with procedural generation. And he was kind of like, yeah, I think this is just something different that's not games. It's sort of like it actually is even more fast food like than games, where somebody prepared a meal for you. Then this is just sort of like we rotate a machine and like a burger pops out.
Yeah. I mean, it's at least giving me another excuse to push students away from choosing the classic choose your own adventure model for their prototypes. Like, come on, you could just get a GPT to do this for you. So that'll be useful.
Or I don't know. The optimistic thing that, Frank Lance likes to say is like, oh, well, this just raises the bar higher. You have to do better than endlessly generating kind of generic choose your own adventure in order to like actually get noticed.
I mean, that's like content generally.
It is true, because it already is generating like crazy from human beings, which takes us to, wait, actually, let's skip over all of this OpenAI stuff. Go straight down to Sports Illustrated. Sports Illustrated is it's a very well-known magazine. It's maybe the biggest sports magazine, and they have been publishing articles by fake AI writers.
I mean, the internet has basically been doing that for years. Let's be honest, but Sports Illustrated is another level.
Right. So this is basically, it's already was happening with like weird stock photos.
Yeah,
right?
weird bots too, like.
Right. So you would just get a stock photo from some site. And it wouldn't be, or maybe it wasn't even a real person. It's been a while since we've been able to just sort of like, you can make or photo bash together like fake people, right? And then they just make up a bio for this person, because nobody human wants to have their byline on stuff that they're getting paid like a minuscule amount to like to churn out 10 articles a day or something, right?
Absolutely.
So this is just AI generating those fake authors. But it's the shocking thing is that Sports Illustrated is doing it.
That is shocking, I think, and it's maybe unethical in some sense, right? They supposed to be leaders in this publishing space, and I think, as a lot of companies have shown and others have not, when it comes to AI, you're talking about people's jobs, you're talking about livelihood of workers and labor. Like, this is something that we should head into not with fear, but with caution and restraint and responsibility. And I think for a mainstream publication to do it kind of like haphazardly is not a great indication of how we're moving forward. Yeah,
it's sort of an attitude towards labor, right? It's like, there used to be this idea that you would be interested in what somebody wrote online because they were a human being, right? And that's why they're still doing it. Because if you put a picture of it on something and have a bio, then people are like, oh, this is a real human has thought about this. Right? So it was already always unethical to make somebody up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then behind the scenes, you basically just have a factory worker being like, I got to make this stuff as quick as I can and like not thinking about what's doing it. Does it matter whether it's a totally dehumanized human being or literally a robot churning out like sludge content as fast as it can? I don't know. It's all like a huge problem for actual labor or actual magazines. Like Sports Illustrated used to be an actual magazine. And I think the very next link is the destruction of popular science. One of the oldest magazines running, 151 years.
Wow.
It's just been shut down. Again, for the same reason this is happening in Sports Illustrated. It's like conglomerates like buying up all of this stuff. Private equity, scooping up as much content as it can, and then like lowering costs, making things more and more automated, turning all of these very venerable brands like Sports Illustrated basically into just more content link farms.
Absolutely.
And then eventually they just go out of business, right?
Yeah.
And then
This happened to 2 companies that I've worked for, basically. So.
Right. Yeah. I'm sorry.
But it's real. Like, print and the internet are not friends, obviously. But it's all of our responsibilities to demand accurate and well-written content. We could do that with our dollars. We can do that with our eyes. And it's going to be more and more important that we all have this literacy to kind of recognize, I think, this kind of stuff, and also demand that when it's not maybe written by a human or it is generated, that there's some indication that that has been the process that this has gone through. Or at least in the reverse, right? Making sure we know it's a real human. Like,
yeah, well, so that's sort of the government approach, right? They're actually trying to institute, the Biden administration is trying to institute regulations that say, look, if something is AI generated, it has to be labeled, right? Kind of like, I guess that's the food labeling approach.
Yeah, kind of.
GMO foods or
Yeah.
whatever. And so I guess that might stem some of this, but I feel like the real effect of this kind of strip mining of written content, because it's like, like cheap to produce or whatever, is to just drive more people probably towards YouTube, right? They're like,
Ugh, yeah, I guess.
I guess so. Or, I don't know. Yeah, like everything gets lower and lower, cheaper and cheaper quality, more and more lists of things that you should buy on Amazon.
I do think there are cool opportunities, though, in this area. Like, for instance, taking a great article that's written by a smart human being and translating it like
Sure.
a billion times as faster than you could to get it out to more people quickly and accurately. If AI can help us with that, I think it's
Well,
pretty
that's certainly
interesting.
already happening because, so it's already driving human translators, or it's definitely not a good career to go into right now.
That's not looking great. And same with like audio, right? For accessibility, I think there's a lot of cool potential for AI to help us with that. So
Sure, like the text to speech
Yeah.
for people, for blind people, for instance.
Exactly.
It's like a much more advanced from where it used to be. Yeah, so there are some upsides, but I don't know. It's just transforming everything, kind of like turning things over and churning so fast now. I guess this is what people mean by capitalist accelerationism. I don't know. Like, where does this end? Where does the spiral down as things merge, get leveled and raised, turn into rubble, get scooped up by other things?
info soup.
Yeah.
I think I feel for everyone caught in the crossfire of this at these companies for sure. So
Yeah, and speaking of which, let's go to the next one. You suggested this
Yeah.
story, right? So ByteDance.
So ByteDance, so a company that owns TikTok, one of the largest apps in the world now, right? They invested so much money into creating games a couple years ago, and recently this week just announced that they are doing massive layoffs and totally basically
Yeah, they're just
eviscerating
withdrawing
that
from
entire
games completely.
concept. Yeah. And this was personally kind of relevant to me because before I went into games, I worked in Snapchat content for a long time, actually. And they tried the same thing. They were really putting a ton of resources into
Right.
these in-app game experiences for these social apps. And so I just thought it was interesting to point out this pattern that we yet again see this kind of failure for a social media app that's blowing up to really embrace game development as
Right.
an arm of its economy.
It's been going on forever. AOL Instant Messenger,
Yeah.
that was part of why that app kind of hit the rocks, is because they invested a ton in trying to do AOL Instant Messenger games. And so every time, I always think of it like an octopus. It's like there's this organism with a lot of power that can kind of reach out and invest a lot and stretching out a tentacle. And then usually, and maybe more often when it's games, something stings it, and it's like, that didn't work the way I thought it was going to
Yeah.
be. And then it kind of recoils and pulls all the resources back out.
But the interesting thing to me, too, is that even though playing games on TikTok hasn't worked out, finding out about games to play on
Right.
TikTok has really worked out. So I get why they would assume that maybe
Yeah.
those things could be combined.
But
in
it
a
never
way.
works like they think it's going to
No,
work. Right?
never
It's
does.
always a little bit different than the typical expectation that might come up in a boardroom presentation of hey guys, if A then B. Well,
Yes.
no, actually no, that's not how it works. But so fortunately, so the thing that a lot of people are reporting is that this is one of the publishers that the ByteDance Games operation was publishing Marvel Snap, maybe one of the best known game in the West. But Marvel Snap is not really itself going to be affected
That's
by
gonna be
this.
fine, I'm
Right, it's going to be
sure.
fine. It's already a popular game. They can just find another publisher. The developers are on the west coast of the U.S. Some friends of the Game Center work there and so forth. So Marvel Snap is okay, but all of the people who were employed by ByteDance, including I think some Game Center alum, I don't know. Maybe they're going to get absorbed by Tencent in Tencent's growing
my
empire,
gosh.
since Tencent is heavily committed to games for better or worse.
Yeah.
Let's go. I'm going to go for the last thing to this, just the next Yeah. So this thing, I was like, oh, this is a interesting bellwether. And I don't know, tell me if you think I'm wrong. But this was a survey that said kids for Christmas, they're more likely to want currency and subscriptions to things like game passes or season passes than they are to ask for like a single game, right? Like a packaged game or a download of a game. And so clearly this is kind of about like, oh, Roblox and Fortnite are so really popular, and that's what kids want more than anything. But it's like dominant. It's like twice as much.
Wild.
Right. So this is like, to me, it looks like, and this is where I'm like, am I old or like what, or am I not understanding this? But it looks to me like a generation that's sort of captured by these like, I just play one game. And you could say Minecraft was kind of already that. But I don't know. It feels like it's accelerating and being monetized far more than Minecraft ever was. That's like, you're just going to play this one game. That's all you're going to know about. That's what you want for Christmas. You don't care about getting other games.
Well, I have to say, like, something like Roblox, like, okay, it's one game, but is it really one game?
It's not really one game. It's a
like
billion
a million
games. Yeah.
So it's a platform.
Sure.
In that sense, to me, this is like, these kids are more interested in access to platforms than they are to particulars. And I don't know if I am that upset about it. Mostly, well, I am from like a digital rights perspective, but that's a different concept here. I also want to point out this article was I had some questions about it because they quote this survey where they got this result from, but then they kind of shift into anecdotal evidence that this is pointing towards currency when it says, I assume Game Pass and PS Plus are part of this category, but it's also very likely that it's these other things. So to me,
so yeah, it could be a ton of kids asking for Game Pass.
Which makes a ton of sense.
And
there's like a billion games.
Right, and then that would be like, I can just all you can eat like a whole bunch of individual games. And around here, we would like that in some ways, maybe not necessarily because it would be so profitable, but because at least kids would be playing games that we want to make.
Exactly, and they would have access to a lot more indie games, for example.
Right,
that's
right.
a viable, right now at least in this time period, a viable economic way to reach a lot of people for smaller developers.
And Lacapie is making a good point in chat that kids have always loved to go somewhere like to a subscription service where they can hang out with their friends or their friends. Club Penguin, really old example, right? Like was so popular. So this maybe is not anything new, and I'm just being like an old person being like, oh, the kids, they're being captured by Tim Sweeney. So you're putting them all in a pen. Roblox is harvesting their labor, which is probably also true, but maybe it's not the apocalypse. Right?
I think it's considered that it's possibly that physical copies of single games are just less interesting.
Yeah, well, we know that because of Game Pass, right?
Rather than these things are just like accelerating so much, it's like the value of having that other thing has gone down.
Right. No kid is being like, I want Call of Duty 6, or I want a copy of Street Fighter 6 for
the only
for
exceptions
Christmas.
seem to be still sports games, which continue
maybe
to come
right. They're
out
still just
yearly.
chugging along.
Yeah.
All right, we should wrap up, but thank you so much. Shout out again to our New York Times featured alums, Jenny Jiaosha, AP Thompson, Fan Fang, and Maiho, for this awesome article.
Congrats.
We'll leave it on that. Thank you, and
thanks for
see
having me.
See you after the holidays sometime. This is the last Discourse of the year.
Oh.
Take it easy over the winter. Stay warm.
That's right. Thank you so much, Naomi and Jeff, for the Discourse. This has been Game Center Live. Thanks so much for tuning in. Once again, the hosts and guests on today's show have been Tori Smith, Sharang Biswas, Naomi Clark, and Jeff Petriello. That's all for today's show, but as a reminder, please tune in or come to Connor Carson's lecture series event this Thursday. With that being said, that means it is time for us to officially sign off of Game Center Live for the fall 2023 semester. But don't worry, we're planning on returning in spring 2024 with more shows. I want to take this moment to thank Naomi Clark for once again curating a semester's worth of game industry news to chat about on stream, Winnie Song for providing the graphics for our live streams, Carl Hone for his behind-the-scenes technical support, and AI Media for supplying the live captions for the show this semester. I've been your behind-the-scenes announcer and operator, Logan Clare, and with all of that, all of us here at the NYU Game Center want to thank you for watching. take care, and have a wonderful, warm, and safe holiday break. We'll see you next time.